Hello and welcome back to another Instagram Live and Artist Stories. I'm Tara Bahal, founder of Loud Art Society, and today we're going to have a very talented artist, Yves Gravel, and he's a songwriter. And while he's going to join us, I'm just going to say a few words about Loud Art Society. Loud Art Society was founded in 2015. We are a nonprofit organization that help to enhance health through art and creativity. And we are operating in the city of Calgary, and since we have been founded, we have held several different public art programs, projects, and events, and collaborative projects with people and artists. And so far we have received a very good feedback with the kind of work that we've been doing. And since the pandemic has started, we have decided to get connected with more artists and get connected to artists from all around the world and ask them to come and share their stories through our Instagram Live program that we have started. All right, so here we have our dear guest today. I'm just going to let him join.
Hello.
Hi, Yves. How are you doing today?
Good, good.
Awesome.
Just in here. Seems that's most of our life these days is just playing around with this stuff. Work, art, for everything.
Seems like you're doing a pretty good job, so.
There we go.
Awesome.
So it's just me and my cat now here.
Where is your cat? Can we see it?
Oh, I'm sure you'll see him appear and pull on thing, and if the phone,
oh, no kitty.
The phone falls off or the speaker falls off, you'll know something's going on.
That's nice. All right, Yves, let's start our live talk today, and please go ahead, introduce yourself to us. Tell us where are you living, where are you coming from, and what type of art it is that you make, and how long have you been doing it for?
So my name is Yves Gravel, and I'm originally from a suburb of Montreal called Verdun, and I moved on the West Coast in 1996. Kelowna, British Columbia, Vancouver, and now I've been in Calgary for just about 20 years or so. So principally I do songwriting and writing and music. I think we had a brief discussion on that earlier. I identify myself more as a songwriter than musician, and I think we'll have a musician because I think we'll talk a little bit about that today in the interview. But principally music and also a little bit of writing and poetry.
Nice, nice. That's beautiful. All right, so why and how did you start making art?
Probably my earliest memories, probably like 13, 14 years old. A lot of writing. And of course, at the time when you do it, I think you think, well, that's just what everybody do. You know, writing poetry and all that. And now in retrospect, I realized that I was writing quite a bit. Unfortunately, all these writings were lost in some moves. But I think 15, 16, really, the writing was every day, mostly poetry. And then I was always playing guitar a little bit, but not seriously, off and on. So art's kind of been with me off and on in my life, but I think it doesn't change who you are. You're always an artist, but as far as practicing it at different level, I think it's really about maybe 5, 6 years ago now that I would say that I consciously made an effort to make some changes in my life to give it more place.
Okay, and do it kind of full time?
No, not full time. I have a full-time 9-to-5 job, and I think when you're a semi-amateur/professional, meaning yes, there's some paid gigs, but it's not something you can live on. But I think the 9-to-5 job becomes important to pay off for all these projects and artistic endeavors that you have. Unfortunately, art is not, it might be free for people to consume, but to make it is very, very expensive.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you go see someone you see someone playing guitar in a coffee shop, you might think, oh, look, a guy might make $50 today, but that guy might have been spending like, $200-300 just to get people there, and
Mm-hmm.
they might have people he has to pay, the equipment, the sound, and all that. So it's definitely not a career at this point as far as the financial aspect of it. So I think that's why to me it's important to keep a regular income coming in, so I can have some bit of fun with my art by financing it myself. Grants are always available, but they're a bit of a lottery. So if you say I'm only going to do this project only if a grant come in, then you might be dying without having done anything. So grants can help, but I wouldn't really count on that to finance everything I do.
Yeah, no, that was a very good point that you mentioned, because I find that the grants are also very time consuming to just like gathering the materials, and with the hope that you're going to receive it and then you don't receive it, you feel like such a disappointment.
Yeah, and it's maybe a lottery is a little extreme because there's certainly things you can do to give yourself more chances, but sometimes it's just sheer number. If I had some review with some panel after grants were submitted, and they were like, we don't have any comments, we don't have any notes, you did everything you did, just a sheer number, who happened to be on that panel that day, and many factors like this. But like you say, they are very time consuming. If people think grants is like taking an afternoon off and writing an application, I would estimate any grant to be take between 30 and 40 hours. So trying to squeeze that in your day, you might say, oh, so you mean just a week? Yeah, but when can you take an entire week off to sit down? And they can be also intense because obviously you have to talk about yourself and your goal and your inner feelings and how that ties to your project. So it's also a full-time job almost just to write grants. So,
So true. Yeah, so true. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
We all been there, I think.
Started from the beginning of the year. I'm like, I'm gonna give myself 6 months to go through all of these grants, and I'm just gonna write through all of them. And yeah, you're right. Yeah, you have to be very vulnerable, tell all of your stories, and there are things that probably you don't feel very comfortable to share, but just because the question is designed, so you are going to answer those, questions. And
but they're good that so far. I really got into them seriously about 2 years ago, and it's a good introspection exercise also, because it's making you think, like, even when asked simple question like, why do you do this? Let's say I want to do this painting of a flower. Why? Why a flower? Why this color? Does that relate to an experience you had? And you're like, oh, wow, now I have to really, to me, it might just have been an idea. Maybe I got in a dream and it's vague and I don't have to talk about it because it's art. People can just interpret it the way they want. But then they're like, no, we want to, without intellectualizing too much, but you have to kind of make a point of why you should be the one receiving all this money. But it is pretty intense.
And then you also have to consider the business side of it too, and like, what are you going to get out of this? And you're still an entrepreneur as an artist, so
certainly
you have to have some sort of strategy of like, why are you going to do this project, and how in the long term is going to affect your career and all that. So it's good to know, but at the same time, if you're that good, you probably don't even need the grants. So
well, I would argue, I mean, sometimes you look at the list, there's certain grant program, the list who got the grant, and we're talking about like established, especially in Quebec because it's a bit of smaller market, established artists that have been around for 20, 30 years, and you think, oh, these people got a team and they got the money rolling in, and you're trying to apply for $10,000 and they're getting it. So I think in this days and age, even unless you're the top tier popular pop singer out there, but I think a lot of even successful artists depends on some sort of assistance, which is good because then we get paid back with getting their art for free. So
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that we talked about this. It just feels now I feel like there are other people that have experienced this, you know, and I'm not very, I'm not alone
oh,
in this.
we're all always stressed, but there's nothing like last minute. I have one due like next week, and now now I'm starting to really get into it. So it's part of the process.
That's true.
Of being at least semi-serious about what you're doing.
That's true.
Yeah.
Agreed. All right. Well, if our organization is actually focusing on the health benefits of the, you know, practicing any form of art and creative activities. And since you've been practicing your art for so long, do you believe that it has any effects on your health at all?
Oh, well, certainly. I mean, especially mental health. I always used my artistic practice as a measurement tool of how I'm doing. Like I might think, oh, I'm doing well, I'm not that stressed, everything's going well in my life, but then I'm like, but wait a minute, I haven't been playing for like 3 weeks. That's always it's almost like an indicator that something is a little off. It can be the same thing for the on the other side of the spectrum. If I haven't been socializing and all I've been doing is being in a room by myself, you know, focusing on art and stressing out about the art, I'm like, well, then maybe this needs some adjustment too. So to me, it's a very good gauge as far as how I'm doing, because when I'm looking back at my life and all the parts that were more difficult, challenging, you know, health crisis, whether it's physical or mental, I can always see a direct correlation of almost like a graph that is side by side exactly how I'm doing. So it can certainly help recover, but I think there's also a double-edged sword where some artists might not help their cause by diving a little too deep in their art and ignoring other part of life, like maybe getting a job and paying the bills and things like that. I think that needs to be well balanced. So definitely has an impact on health. You know, on others, as far as like, oh, can my art impact others? I think most artists would always say that I don't think anybody really thinks of that in the process of making it. But I think everybody that appreciates art or reach out to some sort of whether they go to a museum or see a movie or something, it's always, I think, with an expectation that there's going to be some sort of emotional impact. Yeah, so I think it's inevitable that as soon as you get involved in art, it's going to have some impact on your feeling and your emotion, even if it's something you hate and you can't stand it, but it still triggers something in you. So definitely some impact there.
That's true. Yeah. So, what is the theme of your music, or do you have a theme at all? And how many pieces of, you know, music have you created? Do you count them at all?
I don't think I count, because there's always different levels of is it finished? Is it not finished? Is that shareable? Is that not shareable? The album that I released last year, there's nine tracks on it. It was my first full-length album, so obviously there's always the advantage of being able to pick any material that you've created at any time of your life, because it's your first one, so you have a bit more choices. So I might have had like 20 songs that could have been potentially on the album, but not finished. But I just picked 9, and maybe 4 or 5 of them were like 80% done, some of them 50, some of them were just ideas, but just went with those 9 and ran with it. And of course, once you go through the producing process and other people get involved, it come out in a completely different way than what you imagined earlier. But I would say right now there's probably a dozen of songs that I would feel comfortable doing live in a full-on. If somebody was to pay a ticket, whether it's $10 or $15, I'd probably feel comfortable with a dozen of songs that I think are ready to be shared.
Nice. And what is the theme of your songs?
Again, being the first album, I think when I released the album, that was one of the main questions is what is that? Not that every song has to be the same or have to talk about the same thing, but there's definitely has to be a connection, or otherwise it just seems a little chaotic. So to answer that question, the title of my album is Ambivalent Certainties, because there is a little bit of contradiction in some of the songs and some of the, not to say message, but maybe message in my poetry, where one song might say, well, this song is really about this, and looks like he has a set opinion on all this, about how this relationship went, and then you listen to another song and it seems a little contradictory. So I think the common denominator is probably contradiction, because and that's really what stood out with me and I came out with the title Ambivalent Certainty, because I feel at the same time that I feel so confident about certain song and how they should be presented and what the message is, and then I look at the album as a whole, and it's like, well, it would be hard to sell that as a something that you listen in a certain order and there's a beginning, middle, and an end. So I, to be honest, a year later after releasing the album, I'm still not 100% sure what is the main message or the main common denominator. And I think it changes I think even for song, sometimes it can mean something when you wrote it. By the time you record it, it means something else. And then later on, you see this song as a completely different meaning. And just to give you an example of that, there is a song on my album that I find is probably the most, I wouldn't say dark, but I definitely would not describe it as uplifting. It was a difficult situation, and it was maybe when I remember when I wrote that song, I was probably the most upset or emotional I was when I wrote this song compared to the other song. And more than one person have pointed out to this song as being the uplifting song of the album. Like, oh, what a great message of hope, maybe not hope, but hope, or victory over battle or something like that. I'm like, I listen to this and all I see is like darkness and depression, but they think it's like a fun summer song. So again, once you put it out there, you don't really have control of what people will do with it. And I don't think it really makes any difference at the end of the day what they will read into it. If they enjoy it from one reason or another, it's fine.
Great. Yeah. Awesome. Well, why don't you just play us one of your songs then, and then I'll continue with my question.
Sounds good. So this first song is the song Easy that we were just talking about, that was written with a certain state of mind that seems to have come up at something a little bit more cheerful for some people, but we'll see how that come out today.
Sure.
Trouble but pretty makes me forget my ABC. It ain't easy. Down on one knee, you've never seen all of me. She ain't gonna roll, fight to get this wall. She's gonna stand put and stand tall. It ain't close at all, trying to break this fall, hoping no one has to crawl. Who said easy was the goal? I'd rather reach out for the goal. Who said easy was the goal? I wanna reach out for the goal. She ain't easy, trouble but pretty makes me forget my ABC. It ain't easy from land to sea. I will travel from A to Z. Who said easy was the goal? I'd rather reach out for the hole. Who said easy was the hole? I wanna reach out for the goal. Who said easy was the hole? I wanna reach out for the hole. Who said easy was the hole? I'm gonna reach out for the goal. That is the song Easy.
Beautiful. That was very nice. That was a beautiful song.
Thank you.
But I'm not sure if I feel like it wasn't that depressing, but it wasn't also that victorious.
Yeah. And also the arrangement of the album, of course, is different when you get a beautiful female voice in the background and, you know, different instruments. So obviously, also every opportunity you have to play a different setting, you can present it in a different manner. Yeah.
Okay. Nice, nice. So Yves, do you like to collaborate with other artists as well?
Well, collaboration for me is really everything for two reasons. One by choice and one because I don't have a choice. And the reason I'm saying that is because I said earlier that I don't really see myself as a musician. I don't have any formation. I don't read music. So I need a lot of very strong musician Most of them semi-professional, some of them professional. So collaboration for me has been everything. The reason why the project is called Even the Talent is because really the original idea was that I would do the songwriting, find some people to collaborate, but really not at the forefront. And I would use as my vehicle to express or put forward the art that I was creating. Because at the time, I didn't think, because of my voice and because of my limitation, that I would be the best vehicle for that. But a little bit by default, you start going to open mic, you start playing yourself, you realize that, well, having other people play your song is not that easy when you don't have any credentials to approach people that you would want to perform with. So for those two reasons, by necessity, because I need a lot of strong musicians around me to put forward my vision, but also by choice, just because every time I bring in somebody else, the song, it's a new song. And I really like the idea of giving somebody some direction, say, okay, whether it's a fiddler or the cellist or the pianist, they know the song, they know the chords. There's an idea maybe that you're trying to express to give them some direction, but at the end of the day, it's their instrument and you can't tell them how to play the violin or how to do a guitar solo. So to me, collaboration is, again, important because I must have it to be able to have like a arrangement with all the different instruments, but also just because of the necessity to wanting to hear the song, wanting to hear the song in a different light every time. Otherwise, I don't think I could stand hearing myself doing the same song like over and over again without any variation. So I think since the talent, which really started 4 years ago as far as the idea, it evolved from there. I think there must have been between 20 to 25 different people that have at some point either recorded with, play with, replace somebody that was sick, offer me to play with them, me to play with them to play with me, me to play with them. So it's been a revolving door, but without any. Sometimes when you see the revolving door, right, you might think right away, well, what's going on? The problems, people are leaving. I can't think of a single negative experience with any of these collaborators I had, and sometimes it just doesn't click artistically, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with playing with someone and saying, I don't think that's my thing. That's nothing wrong with that. Or I'm more at the professional level, so I need a bit more of a regular income. Or somebody maybe on the opposite that wants to play with me, but I find maybe they need a bit more fine-tuning in their art. So if you look at my website, they're not all listed, but most of them are most of my current collaborators are listed there, and different background, completely amateur to people that play classical conservatory type music. And to me, that's really what's driving this whole project. I have playing by myself, and that's not really what drives me. To me, is to put the ideas down on paper and putting them forward for other people to elaborate on the vision. Yeah.
Nice. So do you make songs? Have you ever made songs for other people too? Like if they bring their poetries to you and you would be making songs for them?
I do have a few of those things going on, but it never really, I would say that's one of those ongoing projects where, some ideas are getting exchanged and we play on each other's music a little bit, but never to the point where we would go and record it to that level. But that is certainly what I've been, the next level of collaboration that I'm looking forward to is to have somebody take my song and completely not being involved at all and just say, do your thing. And typically in a completely different genre. I really like the electronic music and the synthesizer sound, things like that, but that's not what I do. So I've approached some people to take my song and then do whatever they want with it. So I think in some future project, maybe in a year or two, I will re-release a couple of the songs that are on the album, but completely unrecognizable. So that's really another level of collaboration I'm looking forward to take part of, is letting somebody complete carte blanche to do whatever they want. So, and that to me, that would be so exciting. Just the first time to sit down and hit the play button and not knowing. And sometime again, you write a song and you have a vision for it, and somebody hears something completely different. So that's another type of collaboration I'm really looking forward to take part of.
That's interesting. So I'm not sure if you mentioned that or not, but do you have education in music or not at all? You just
No, not at all. Aside from workshops earlier this year, just before COVID hit, I had the opportunity to take part in a program with National Music Center here in Calgary, in collaboration with Manitoba Music and other Alberta organization who, and then they had people coming from the industry, like record label people, producer, show bookers, and it was 3 days of intense talks and seminars. We got to present our album, almost like pretending that we were trying to sell it to a record label. So I had this kind of opportunity, but nothing formal as far as Bachelor of Music or anything like that. It's again at this point in my artistically, and also not that you're never too old to do anything, but you still have to factor your age sometimes. That dedicating myself to learning an instrument to where I would want, at the level I would want it to play, it would consume too much away from what I'm really about, which is the songwriting. And again, if I need a guitar solo, why would I spend 50 hours practicing and learning it when this guy I know can do it in 5 minutes, and it will be better and it will be more exciting because it will be coming out of somebody else's brain. So I'm always looking for education, but more from the artistic development creation rather than the technical aspect. Of course, I wish my parents would have put me on piano when I was 5 and forbid me to play outside and just force me to play piano. But that didn't happen, so I don't have these in my toolbox. So I rely on other people who had these skills.
Well, I'm glad that your passion brought you here anyway, regardless of your education. So with that being said, what is your perspective on art and creativity in general?
On art and creativity?
Yes.
My perspective. What would you mean by my perspective?
So like you just said, about whether someone who would go to school and spend like 50 hours like this and that, but like yours is just very intuitive, almost self-taught, like you have taken some workshops, but like what is about art and your creative endeavor?
I find, for me, again, I find that sometimes too much importance is going to the technicality of things. Like everything, it's true that when you reach a certain level, it is required, because even if I say, I don't read music, but because I don't read music, it can be hard for me to communicate ideas to some people. So it's always useful. But I think too often when people think about art, they think about talent, which to me is not necessarily the same thing. We know some people that are extremely talented. They can paint the face of someone like a picture, but you can sense sometimes that doesn't have the artistry that others might not barely be able to draw something, but their art is way more attractive and way more transpired. There's a lot more that inspires through it. So
Yeah.
I find that, not that I'm in position of giving advice, but if I was to, I always encourage people to focus more on the artistry than the technical side of things. Like people that say, "Oh, I don't want to go to open mic because my guitar skills aren't that great, and I wrote that song and I make mistakes." And it's same thing like people that want to go in business and they're always like, "Oh, I need to wait till I have this, and I have to wait after I get married, and I have to wait," and then we all know how this story goes. So my perspective of art is really to put it out there as fast as possible, because the same thing with the talent. When I started this, I didn't know a single person on the Calgary art scene, and I didn't think I was ready. I definitely wasn't ready to perform even in an open mic. Might seem not like a big deal, but when you've only played for yourself in your living room, you know, I was nauseous. You know, I felt nauseous and the sweats and all that. But it's in these situations that I met most of the people that I know today, that you find encouragement, that you find people that maybe are not as talented as you are, but you see all the stuff that they're putting out there is meaningful, and it's not how ready you are, or you know how perfectly your poetry is written in accordance to the rules of poetry. So to be my perspective to wrap up that question is to really only start focusing on the technical stuff once it's required, right? Like people that wants to start writing poetry and then they start reading books on how to write poetry. To me, that doesn't make any sense. You just write, and then I think naturally at some point you would realize that, well, every time I write, I find that I'm in a certain pattern. How would I break out of this pattern? And then you educate yourself on, oh, okay, I can see why poetry in other people seems so much flowing so much more naturally, and mine seems a bit more robotic. But unless you write the poetry, you're not going to know really what you need. So I think putting it out there, and obviously you need a certain level of not caring, because I'm pretty sure that especially when you're an upcoming artist, for every one person that likes my album, I'm sure there's at least 5 that will think it's total crap. Another 2 that would think that I have no business even making an album. Another 2 thinking, yes, and I've heard that even through grants, you know, some comments, yes, maybe it's a good album, but this instrument should not be on the album. You need a certain level of not caring. So, you know, yes, we're artists and we all want attention, but if your goal is to have all your friends always like cheering you up and all that, I mean, even when I have little concert and little gigs, the hardest people to get to come are those close friends, or people who would think that your support level, and it's like you don't necessarily get this instant gratification, or maybe you'll never get gratification. So yeah, sorry, I kind of lost my thought here, but what the question was, but I think that's my perspective in general. Just do it.
That was a very good response, actually. And you kind of gave my answer for the next question that I have from you, which is, what is your recommendation to those people who just want to start writing music? And as you said, just put it out there, start it.
Yeah, and I think it's never to look at again, I think it's a natural instinct to always think of what our limitations are. Even if somebody gonna say, oh, I can only play 2 guitar chords, like the number of songs that I could pull that you like, that you listen to every day and are written on 2 chords, it's enough. It's enough. And I mean, to me, I have my greatest inspiration, like in life, in art, in music, in writing, and every aspect of life is Leonard Cohen. And he's a perfect example of that. The guy can't sing. The guy can, he plays music, but he's definitely not what I would call a musician in all sense of the word. He doesn't get the physique. The guy has absolutely nothing as far as the checkbox that people would expect of somebody that should be out there. And he has this early critique, and it's the same thing. I was just earlier, his most popular book, Beautiful Loser. Right now, it's considered one of the top greatest, depends how you use the term great, but most influential book in Canadian history. But I was reading reviews when it came out, and it was from the Toronto Star, and it was total crap, verbal masturbation, a piece of crap, complete waste of time. Somebody even said, I read this book and now I feel I have to go wash my mind.
Oh my God.
And, he was impacted at the time. It's when you spend 3 years of your life or 4 years on one project. But if there's an expectation that your art is always going to be appreciated, or I don't know if I should say appreciated, but
understood, maybe.
Understood, or yeah. And it's, some people get it. Some people get it. Like, again, to come back to the example of Leonard Cohen, some people would say, I don't understand why you listen to him. His voice is awful, but you get it, that it's not about the voice the same way some people will do other kind of art, and you're like, I don't get it. You can't even recognize the painting. You don't even know what it is. I'm like, well, that's the point, right? The guy cannot draw a face, but he can draw some lines, and when you look at them, you're mesmerized for some reason. So I think it's the same thing in all kind of different artistic practice. The advice is always like, you want to do it, you do it, but don't have an expectation that even your mom's gonna like it, or that that everybody around you will be, wow, this is amazing, and I'll support you. Some people around you don't get it. They might think it's a joke, or they might think, it's that very little cute poetry that you wrote on the side. It seems very fun, and meanwhile you're like, that's not cute poetry. It's like, I took 3 years to write that, and so. Again, it's art, and you principally do it because you have to do it, right? It's not like anybody forcing you to create something. It's an outlet. Again, like we said earlier, sometime in the benefit of your mental health, sometime in the detriment of your mental health. But it's something you do because you have to do it. The same way some people go to the gym every day, and you ask them why, and they just feel they have to. If they don't do it, they don't feel themselves. They feel depressed. So I think same thing for any other field that people are interested in.
Yeah, it also becomes a lifestyle too, just as you mentioned about the physical workout. Once you do it and it becomes part of your lifestyle, you can't just cut it out of your life. Art is just like that too. Some of the artists that we've been interviewing on this program have mentioned this as well, that it just feels like a lifestyle, being creative. And even if you're not making a living out of it, it's still part of your life, and you always do it, whether you like it or not. It's just there.
Yeah. So. And even maybe the example of a painter is a little easier to understand because it's more visual, but even if a painter hasn't painted for 2 years, he's still a painter every day, because when he looks at things around him, he sees it through the eye of a painter. So somebody could say, well, this person's not really an artist. You know, they haven't created anything in 3 years, but whether it's because they have a physical ailment that prevents them, or sometimes I just don't have the, whether I'm lazy or whether I just don't feel like it, I just don't play guitar for extended period of time. But that doesn't change the fact that how I would look at life is a little different as far as how I see things through my lens. Yeah.
Nice. All right. I have a few more questions left. To be exact, 3 more questions. If you have another piece for us to play, please go ahead, play, and then we'll get to the last 3 questions.
Okay, we'll do that. So this next one is called Muse. And if you go on my website or Instagram page, you'll see that during COVID, I did what most people did, is these collaboration by distance. And that gave it a different twist to the version that's on the album. And again, today we'll play it a little different, just because I'm by myself and it's a different day and I feel differently, so it's gonna come out differently as soon as I find the pick that I need. So again, this one is called Muse. Yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Can you hear me well?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Go ahead.
When you come to me as a muse, are you here to feel abused or deploy an evil ruse? Either way, who's to accuse? When you speak to me as a muse, feeling air with your excuse, only hearing what you choose. Either way, stop these interviews. When you learn what is a muse, when you'll seek no more reviews, from number numbers lined in queues, I will be gone, I'll leave no clues. you undress for me as a muse, sharing ink from faint tattoos, wanting to break all taboos. Either way, offerings out, both refuse. When you refrain from me as a muse, isn't that passive overuse? That an attempt to strike my bruise? Either way, in you there's no guru. When you learn what is a muse, when you seek no more reviews, from men by numbers blind in views, I will be gone, I'll leave no clues. I will be gone. I will be gone. So that is the song Muse, and this version was new for me too, so I'll have to listen to this later and see how that sounded.
It was very interesting.
Thank you. Interesting is always better to me than good. Interesting to me is more important than good, because there's a lot of good out there, but not all interesting.
Every time, as you said, every time that you play it, it's a new version. So
yeah,
it just gets better. All right, Yves, let me move on to my next question, which is, who were you most inspired by for yourself and your art?
So I think I talked about Leonard Cohen already quite a bit. So that's by far and above the biggest influence. And again, not just from the songwriting perspective, but just overall as an artist. When you feel influenced by someone, I think as time goes by, you start realizing that it's not so much that you want to emulate that person, but that the reason why you're attracted to this person in the first place is because they're a bit like you. And then I always want to put clarification when I say that. Obviously, I'm not comparing the talent and the artist, but I'm just talking about the like what you were talking about earlier, the how you see art and the meaning of art and why you should do it and who you should do it for and why you should do it and all this. So I think there's a synchronicity with the way I see things and the way Leonard Cohen see things. So that's one for sure. And then most of the other influences are really here people in Calgary. Like I said, some people that I play with, and it give me ideas to bring the song in a completely different direction. Sometimes because they haven't listened to my instruction at all, but all for the better because it brought the song in a completely different direction. So I think influences sometimes are subconscious. Obviously, you're always influenced by what you hear, and sometimes you can't help it, but by feedback you receive subconsciously, you might make adjustment. But I think Leonard Cohen for me has such a big place that it's kind of hard to even bringing a second person as comparable as far as if I were to list influences, and of course artistically speaking.
Cool, cool. So if you could change anything about yourself, what would you change?
Well, I think we would come back to what we were talking about earlier, the technical aspect. I think everybody always hope that they would have more time to practice and more time to further their skill. So definitely me, having more technical skill, I feel would give me more ability to maybe bring forward some ideas that I might have on paper in my head, but I can't necessarily put forward out there without collaborators. So it is a bit of a regret not to have, when I was younger, taking music more seriously and, go to my guitar lesson and, we had a piano at home, spend more time on it, to have these tools in my toolbox. But at the same time, again, by necessity, by not having these skills, I was forced in a way to count on collaboration. And I think that ended up being a bit of a blessing, because I think if you remove the collaborative aspect from everything I do, I don't think there's a lot there left as far as I'm concerned, as far as not me as an artist of what I could do, but as far as this project. I mean, I could do another project later on that is more one guy playing acoustic guitar by himself. But as far as what I'm trying to do with this project of Even the Talent, I think the regret of not having more technical skill was replaced by the joy of the collaborative process.
Right. That's true. I don't think anyone can achieve anything alone by themselves. So
no.
Collaboration is important. So my next question to you is, if you had a superpower, what would that be?
A superpower. Probably I don't know if drive is the right word, but there's certainly something I have ideas and I wish I could just push a button and have the drive to go full on and then do it. So yeah, maybe as some sort of button that could say, today I want to be on level 4 drive, which means I can sit down and write a song and finish it all in one weekend instead of having it drag for 2 months or 2 years. So yeah, I think having the ability to have an extra boost of energy and drive, and I think to me would be great. And then you shut it down when you can, because there's time I don't want to think about art, not think about anything. So be pretty awesome to be able to shut it down, because sometimes you want to shut it down and you can't. And that's one thing when you get involved in artistic projects. Sometimes you go home after, and it's can be pretty intense to being able to calm down and even go back to your regular job, because you're still I don't know if adrenaline is the right word, but whatever intensity you're going through when you're either performing or recording an album, and so being able to say, let's boost this drive.
We are running out of time. There is only 8 seconds left.